I could just come back home from school and think about the work I needed. No, I had to do. I even tried to motivate myself with such nonsense as inspiring quotes or a phrase like, if you prepare for your math exam now, you'll have much more time later. And I did plan how and when I would do this. But it always ended up with me, laying in my bed, looking at the ceiling, and thinking of a flying pig that could do all the work instead of me. So one day, after failing another math exam, I finally decided to change the things. If there is one thing that even many ambitious people struggle with, it's staying focused on their work for longer periods of time without getting distracted. Yet, it's those who are able to focus deeply on their most important work and to think what is most important in their life, so they can do their work perfectly and really fast. In fact, I want to show you some tragic statistics of how big that problem is in the 21st century. A study led by Harvard showed that the average knowledge worker spends 47% of his or her day in a state of semi-distraction. In other words, when you learn how to focus well, you can get the same exact task done twice as fast. Rescue Time has researched that the average knowledge worker checks email about 55 times per day, on average every 8.5 minutes taken in an 8-hour workday. And instant messaging apps about 77 times per day, on average every 6 minutes taken in an 8-hour workday. And that's why at first I needed to block out all possible distractions that I would procrastinate on in the past. My smartphone is my biggest enemy of non-existent personal growth. But did you really believe that the master of procrastination could just in one blink of an eye change their mind and start to spread productivity? Because the first thought I've got was, what would be too boring for you? Of course, the only things I had spent all my time with were computer games, hanging out with friends, or procrastination at all. So it obviously was impossible for me to start working by snapping my fingers. The idea of doing more and reaching positive changes in life is extremely fascinating to anyone. But achieving those in practice is one of the most complicated tasks ever. During the experiment of spending 1 week productive, I've learned a lot of new things. But the main was this. To achieve high productivity, you need a powerful motivation. The difference between a productive person and a procrastinator comes down to the ability or inability to work consciously and purposefully. Actually, the existence of a clearly stated goal is equally important. You can spend countless hours in developing or improving your habits, but everything will be in vain if there is no deep motivation. So as a result, after some time, you roll back to the starting point. So the process of my self-realization was started, and since I am faced with the task of radically improving my productivity, I need to figure out what I am going to use it for. I've never struggled with having bad grades or studying itself, but I've never had time for education outside of school. And there were so many things I'd be excited to do. Learn a language, do a sport, become better students, and so many else. And this was the main target of my productive week. Oh, it is obvious that I want to get the highest improvement. But how can I do this? I read tons of articles trying to find the right way, and I finally found one with an effective advice. The night before, I had to write down a to-do list with no more than 3 important tasks of tomorrow. The thing was that I needed to complete them during the day. Since I didn't have big fantastic plans for my productive week, I decided to complete 2 things regularly, such as learning Swedish and reading at least 50 pages of book per day. Actually, the first 2 days passed great, and I felt like I'm finally doing something useful. But the following days, my work was done in a completely different way. Instead of taking short breaks for myself, I've continued to work despite the feeling of being tired, trying to do as much as possible and to test as many techniques related to productivity as possible. As I increased the pace of work, I felt that during the day I became less calm and less focused, but the worst part was that my work was done really uncontrolled. And I've noticed that the biggest mistake I've done was that I've continued to work automatically, because it is almost impossible to distance yourself from the work you're doing and to think what is most important, how to do work in a more creative way, how to work more rationally and not just more intensively. So the next 5 days I didn't overwork myself, but I didn't get lazy either, and that's a big success. Even so, some tricky thoughts about getting back to the old lifestyle were coming to my head time by time. But the desire to achieve my goals happened to be stronger. Actually, during the end of the experiment, I've noticed 3 things which cause how productive you will be: time, attention, and energy. I was simply amazed at how interconnected all 3 components were. If you foolishly manage the time, it doesn't matter how much energy you have or how focused you are, you will not be able to achieve high productivity anyways. And it takes longer time to get enough sleep, but it increases your energy and ability to control your attention. And perhaps the most important is that if you can't manage all 3 things which cause productivity, time, attention, and energy, it is almost impossible to work consciously and purposefully throughout the day. So I can tell that the experiment was a big success, and now I want to highlight a couple of tips that can also help you to change your appearance. First, I recommend you to resolve working in a free distraction zone for at least 2 hours per day. So put your phone in another room or put it on flight mode. Turn off notifications, bells, rings so you won't be disturbed. Secondly, never forget to take short, mindful breaks for yourself. Never forget to eat and sleep, even if you are maximally motivated. And now I can finally say that I achieved all my goals in life and I have time for everything. So can you. Thank you.